I am Debbie Schwartz, founder of Road to College, and I'm here tonight with Luann Lee, who is a college counselor and college funding specialist from Your College Planning Coach. And I'm also here with Erin from Ascent Funding. And I want each of them to introduce themselves, but before they do, let me just do some little housekeeping. I still see a few people coming in, and it's not your fault, probably our fault on our end. You're not muted. If by chance you see yourself and you're not muted, please mute yourself. This is a meeting. It's not actually an official webinar. And so if you come in unmuted, we can hear some of your background noise. And the other thing is, while I'm saying all this, I am going to stream this to Facebook as well, so that people can see it there. And while I'm doing that, two things. If you guys can put in the chat where you're watching from, that's one thing. How many kids you have in college? And most importantly, I'm very curious to know what grade students and have or families have their students in. Or do we have more students of 11th grade or 12th grade? I know it's usually a mix, but it would be good to see what grade people are in, and it just gives us a sense of probably the type of questions that we're going to get. And let me just finish this. Okay. I think I lost my sharing. Okay. And so Erin, if you don't mind, would you tell us a little bit about yourself and Ascent Funding? And I should mention that tonight is a program that's being co-sponsored by Road to College, who is us, and College Confidential. And Erin can tell you a little bit more about College Confidential and Ascent Funding.
Hi, I am watching all of these blurbs come up on this, so we've got people from all over the place, but I did want to send a shout out to all my Michigan people. Go Lions. I am based in Michigan, and I am a proud Lions fan. First time I've been watching football this actively in a long time, so if there's any 49er fans out there, I am apologizing now. So my name is Erin. I am the school channel sales coordinator at Ascent Funding. So Ascent Funding is a private loan company, but also a student success company. So we help students prepare, we help students pay, and we help students succeed through college from the beginning to the end. So kind of to touch on those three parts and how we all partner together under one very, very friendly, family-oriented umbrella is the prepare side of it is what I'm going to talk most about today. And that is our College Confidential. It allows students and families to compare schools, to look at statistics, some information, but the best part of it is the forums, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here shortly. Sorry, the pay for college part is the student loan, private loan section of Ascent, and that would be private alternative loans in addition to any other financial aid students would be eligible for. And then the Succeed is our Ascent Up product, which is help for students who are going to college who may need help with interviewing skills because they're transitioning from their associate degree to their master's or master's into the workforce. It helps with study time or time management. It's a wealth of knowledge about financial aid tips, tricks, there's blogs. It's an amazing site. But today I am focusing more on the prepare side because you are all ready to get going and out of your parents' house and into college. So I think that is it. I have 16 plus years of higher ed experience. So I do come from the school side. So I know what it's like being a college student heading off to college. So welcome, and I will pass the baton to Luann.
Thanks, Erin.
Well, thanks, Erin, and good evening, everyone. It's Luann Lee. I'm the owner of Your College Planning Coach, and Debbie and I have been doing these joint meetings for a number of years now. So I'm based in Virginia. I saw quite a number of people that are in Virginia. So if you're in Warrenton, come on down. I'm at the office right on Main Street. and look forward to sharing some great information with all of you this evening. And, Debbie, why don't we just go ahead and get started? So the quicker we can get started, the quicker we can finish.
Great. Can I just, one other like housekeeping, can you guys see the captions? It's just a little strange. On my screen, I have two screens and captions are showing up on one and slides are on another.
Yeah, I'm just seeing, the normal slide.
Okay. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm not quite sure how I can fix that one. I'll have to work on that one for another time. But this is being recorded. So, if you guys want to watch it later, and we'll send out the link tomorrow. Thanks, Luann, and thanks, Erin. So tonight we're going to talk about what we're seeing with the early admissions. We're going to talk about, trends that we're seeing and also some takeaways, particularly for the class of 2025, what you should think about as you're kind of starting this journey of college admissions. So somebody said each participant can turn captions on and off manually. Good to know. That's probably what's going on. Okay. Let's keep going. So before we get started, three other quick things. Actually, Luann and I and a few other counselors are participating in a program that Road to College runs called Road to College Premium. And tonight's session is actually similar to several sessions that we run monthly. We have live sessions that talk about all the aspects of both college admissions and college funding. So we really mix the two together, not just about how you get in, but how you figure out how to pay for college. And so if tonight's session is something that interests you, you'll get some more information about joining what we call the Road to College Premium program. And you could consider that. We are running a special since the beginning of the year. And sometimes I know this goes on deaf ears, and Luann and I say this all the time. We hear families, kind of in the August and fall timeframe saying, I wish I had met you earlier. Well, now is your earlier time. So if you get involved now to really understand the process and the system, and it does make a big impact on your stress level, on your student stress level, and your results, because you have a better grasp of how things work, how financial aid works, how merit scholarships work, how private scholarships work, how to put an application together, how to write the essays. And so if that's something of interest to you, you'll get more information about that in emails. And lastly, if there are families of seniors, which I'm not quite sure because I see a lot of high school juniors, which is great, but we have a site called Compare College Offers, where seniors that have offers share their offers, and then they get to see what other students at the same colleges have also been given in terms of financial aid or merit scholarship. So it's a really good tool, completely free, and the information that you submit is shared anonymously. So it's a good tool to kind of gauge whether the money you received is in line with what other students in a similar profile are also receiving. So you might want to consider that. And lastly, we have some information about what you should be looking at on College Confidential, because they also do some similar efforts in terms of compiling data, which I know over the years, students and parents have found very, very valuable. So Erin, if you could share a little bit more about where people should go look on College Confidential.
Yeah, absolutely. So College Confidential is our online community that provides access to information for students and families relating to early admissions or basic, just comparative data from school to school. It has information and statistics and data from over 3,800 schools. So when you're out looking, comparing colleges as a student or as a parent, you can see the different stats, the different data, how many people were applied to the college, what their GPA or stat scores were, and kind of see where your student falls into that. It is designed to guide students and families through that choosing a college type decision. It gives you a lot of information But what I truly do like about this is it has questions and forums from other students who have been in the situation or in the time frame you are in now, whereas I'm kind of getting an idea of where I want to go, what I need to do. And this is like that type of forum is very student and family driven. You can ask questions, you can share all sorts of different informations with one another. It is really cool. I love going out there and just seeing what the students are talking about now and what is most important to them in getting into the schools. So it's very cool, very interesting information. It's all 3,800 schools around there have this information in these forums for students and families. The other thing I wanted to draw your attention to, because there's several different forums and tons of data. If you like data, this is where you go. Tons of information and valuable information. But I remember going to college and having to write those essays, whether it's for a scholarship, for an admissions application, or whatever the case may be. And writing an essay can be very intimidating. College Confidential has a free essay feedback, which is awesome because it just needs somebody else to read that before you hit submit. So I love that feature. So with that, there are tons of other key features to College Confidential. You can go and just sign up for free, go in there and see any information you want. And it is invaluable when you're trying to make a decision on which school to go to, how to apply, and what early admissions and things look at different institutions. I think that was it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I saw somebody mention that they've been on College Confidential for 22 years. I assume that maybe they are a college professional or college counseling professional because you wouldn't have kids for 22 years, but that's great.
I saw that too. That was great. I put a little heart on it. So
yeah. Okay, so let's get going. So we actually, Luann and I did this presentation in December. It was right before the holidays, so we thought we would do it again because, you know, understandably, a lot of people might not have shown up, although we did get a good crowd because of just holiday plans. And I just want to say that the numbers were actually, we've updated them because a lot of this information is shared through the Common App. And they put out, in these kind of months, they put out updates from November 1st, December 1st. I think the next one might be March. So it's just kind of interesting trends. We're going to talk about trends and then try and kind of piece these puzzle pieces together for you, which I think will be really helpful for the majority of people that are watching who have 11th graders. But a trend that we have been seeing, and this isn't new, that applications have been increasing, quite honestly, since 2019. You know, during the pandemic years, it's increased, not as much, but as the years have gone on, this you know, number of applications that students are sending, this is number of applications, this isn't number of applicants, which we'll talk about next, just continues to rise. And a lot of that, as Luann and I talked about earlier, is from the test optional world that has happened. And as more students are sending out more applications, it's almost like it fosters an increase every year because the system becomes more unpredictable. So kind of as a student, if you have less predictability or less insight into where you might actually get accepted, you tend to send out more applications. And then this kind of increases year after year. I don't know, Luann, if you have anything else you want to add.
Well, you know, Debbie, one of the things with the new FAFSA this year, it went from 10 applications to the ability to do 20 applications. And I think this is going to, again, feed this, oh, geez, we can apply for more schools because now we can put a lot more schools in that one application.
And just, you could have applied to more than 10 schools in the old FAFSA. It just, you just had to, take some steps to kind of take some colleges off and add them. But to Luann's point, which is very valid, which I hadn't even thought about, it's just one more thing that makes it easier to just put out more applications than before. And somebody said, well, can't you only apply to one school for early admission? Great comment, good question. We are talking about early admissions, which is a title that to me refers to early action and early decision. Early decision, you can only send in one application, because if you are admitted early decision, you are committed and to go to that college. Early action, you can send in as many as you want. And even if you do apply early decision to one college, you can still apply to multiple early action colleges. So that's why we see the increase in applications early, because, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but more colleges are getting on the bandwagon to offer early action. So, and more students are taking them up to apply early action. So in a similar trend, we are seeing more applicants. That is increasing. There is about 34% more applicants applying to college now versus in the pre-pandemic years. And I don't honestly have the breakdown of this, but my gut is that this increase is coming a little bit from domestic school students and much more from international students, as the pandemic obviously has waned away and international students are coming back. They are, continue to apply to the U.S. schools, and we have some data on which countries they are coming from. But that's my gut. I'll probably look into it a little deeper. But I don't know, Luann, if you have any other thoughts about where the increase is coming from.
Yeah, I agree, Debbie. It's a lot of it is, more and more students are applying to more and more schools, but we also have a lot more of the international students that were not applying during the COVID years, and now they're coming back tenfold.
And along with, so we've now said there's more applications, there's more applicants, and of course, each applicant, which kind of fuels the data for more applications, each applicant is sending out more applications to more schools. And somebody is asking, well, what's the implication of so many more applications? Is it more competitive to be accepted? Yes, it's just, think of it like a system, and there's basically there's more velocity going on in the system, and it makes it a little bit more chaotic and harder to predict. Plus, and Luann, you had some interesting comments and stories about this, it's a lot more pressure on an admissions office. They don't necessarily, their staff doesn't grow. So, they may have the same staff, and now they have to figure out, how do we handle and process and review and make decisions on all these more applications coming through. And at certain schools, we're talking about big volumes. I mean, later on, we're going to mention, but some of the state schools or some of the schools that have become more popular, particularly as they get onto the Common App. I know James Madison, which was the reason why, did they join the Common App last year, Luann? I don't know if you know.
Yeah, JMU, Virginia Tech, and University of Maryland. And all three of those schools had a massive explosion.
We're talking about 10,000 more, applications in the year.
Correct. Yeah.
A lot of that was fueled from coming onto the Common App, which again makes it easier to send out an application. And those, admissions offices have to figure out how they're going to handle this increase in volume. So it basically puts a lot of pressure on the system. So this is just to give you a sense again for early applications, as a percentage of all the applications that are sent out, from, August to, whenever the regular decision deadlines are, we are continuing to see, it's kind of like it's pulling it forward. There's more and more students taking advantage of early admissions, and there's a pros and cons to that, and we'll talk about it. There was a little dip, that 2020 2020, 2021 year was the pandemic year. There was a little dip then, but we're coming back. And last year, 58% of applications were sent, students applied early. We don't know what the final number is now because we don't know what all the total number of applications are for this year. But just seeing is over 500,000 increase in applications. I'm sure the percentage of applications that are being sent in early is going to increase. And I know, Luann, you're seeing it in your own practice in terms of, students are just more are applying early, and you're also, as a professional, encouraging them to finish up earlier in the process.
Sure. And somebody I saw in the chat was asking why so many more? Well, I've been in this industry for 20 years now, and it's taken this long for the public to finally see that the cost of education has tipped that point that you're stepping back and saying it costs how much. So a lot of the time, the early application has that incentive that, hey, if we're going to give some merit scholarship, make sure that your applications are in by the early action deadlines. So I think a lot more families are paying attention to that. Plus, just that added stress of getting everything in so that the students can, pay attention to their senior year, have fun in their senior year as well. But they want, those earlier, they want those earlier acceptances, or, but what's happening is we've got so many more students that are applying during that early action period. And ever since COVID, a lot of the admissions offices, they've lost a lot of staff. They're overwhelmed, especially this year with everything that's going on with FAFSA. And so they're getting a lot more volume of the applications, and they just cannot manage it all during, that date. Are they going to have to adjust those dates? Probably. But, for right now, they're ending up, deferring a lot more applicants over to the regular decision because they just want to be fair to be able to look at all of the applications. Are we frustrated by this? Absolutely. But, just because a student has been deferred to regular decision does not mean that they have been denied. They're just being given an opportunity to really look at those applicants and saying, okay, do we have room for this student? Are they what we're looking for to complete our enrollment for the year?
And I even remember just in the past few days, kind of doing some research for these slides to get data. And I apologize, I can't remember exactly which college it was. It might have even been JMU, where they explain on their admissions page that they are going to defer a lot of students because they can't get through everybody for early admissions. And that a lot of deferred students, and this is particular to the school, do end up getting accepted, but they kind of are giving a heads up as to how their admissions process is working.
Yeah, a number of schools have started to do that this year, which, they're being very transparent, which I can appreciate. So we just have to have patience. This is the year of patience.
So I just want to say there's two people here, and you guys must be good followers of the Common App, who mentioned that besides JMU, who joined the Common App the other year, Rutgers also joined the Common App, which again, the pro is it makes it easier to apply to Rutgers. The con is we'll probably see Rutgers, application numbers increase because it is easier to apply, and also University of Washington. So, there's good and bad to this, but as more of these bigger schools, and these are the larger schools, come onto the platform, it just kind of increases these numbers and makes it easier for students to send in those applications, which kind of, again, adds a little bit to the unpredictability and the chaos in the system. Somebody's also asking if your child really loves the school that's on the Common App, should he or she apply directly and try and communicate with the admissions office to show their enthusiasm, or does it matter? Does it not matter if they apply directly versus the Common App? I don't know, Luann, if you want to talk to that, or I can say something.
You know, I don't really think it makes a difference. A few of the schools that I've talked to over the years and asked that question, they've all said it really doesn't matter. What helps is if you look at the common data set and find out, does the school, do they want you to show more interest? Is that tracked or such? For those of you that are new, if you Google common data set with the name of a college, you can see a lot of data about what's important to the schools when they're looking at, your students' applications.
Somebody made a very good comment that said, well, if the colleges make the early action date August 1st, that would probably cut the number of applications in half. And you are so right. That would be a nice strategy to see some of the colleges take advantage of. Okay, so another kind of trend that we're seeing, this has actually been around for a while, is that the majority of applicants do come from above the national median in terms of household income. 66% of applicants, live in a zip code that's above the national median. We've known that for a while, that majority of students who apply to college are usually from those types of households. But what they are also seeing, and this is probably what fed into a little bit of the increase in the number of applications, is a growth in applicants from lower income zip codes. And that growth, even though both segments are increasing, the growth from lower income families is increasing higher. And this has been an effort on both the Common Apps, what they're trying to do, and as well as colleges to draw more students from lower income areas. Okay, another trend that we are seeing is a very large increase in applications to public colleges. If you compare the number of applications that students are sending to public versus private colleges, and again, comparing it to the pre-pandemic year, there's been a 67% increase in the number of applications going to public schools versus 37% to private schools. Again, this isn't surprising. Some of this increase, as we've been saying, can be attributed to some large flagship state schools that have come on to the Common App platform, like Rutgers, like University of Washington. But another piece of this is just people recognizing the price of college, and there's been much more recognition of trying to apply to public schools, public universities. Although those tuitions have been increasing, they are still, in the scheme of costs, a little bit more affordable than private colleges. I don't know, Luann, if you have more to say about that.
Yeah, Debbie, I just want to caution all of you parents that, this is kind of your first segue into this, just to be aware that, yes, the cost of college has increased, just dramatically. And on the surface, the state schools, are always going to look less expensive. But for some students, some of those private schools are going to either be a similar cost because of either qualifying for institutional aid and or merit scholarships. And so sometimes it's going to bring down that cost to be similar to your state flagships and in-state colleges, so that your child has options. And so don't automatically assume that a $60,000-$70,000 per year sticker price is off the decision as far as applying. You have to dig deep and find out, well, do they give merit scholarships? Is your student going to fit into say the top 10 or 20% of that incoming class, do you qualify for institutional aid that would help to bring that cost down to be more in line with your state universities and such? Because a lot of those state universities, if you, let's just say that you're a lower income family, but your student isn't in that top, 10% of what they're looking for, they may not make up that gap. So it's still going to be a costly expense that's going to be more unaffordable in many cases.
And I think, Luann, what you're also kind of subtly referring to is you need to have a good balance on a student's college list. I personally always recommend that a student apply to their state school and Luann used the word to have options. So you can do your research and you can find a school where you probably can get merit scholarships and your net costs will get close to your state school, but better to have options to choose from when all the decisions come in than to only have one school where your student gets in and you can't make a comparison of what those final costs might be. Okay. So moving on, other trends that we're seeing kind of in the whole system is that underrepresented minority students have also increased in terms of applying to college, and first-gen students. This is all good. This is all an effort on both, again, the Common App and the colleges in trying to pull students from different social economic households. And we're seeing it pay off. And again, this probably feeds into the numbers of seeing in terms of the increase of the number of applicants in the system. So here's an interesting stat, is that this is a little bit more of the breakdown of where the applications are growing. So I don't have it listed here, but if we were to break out between 2019, 20, 21, 22, we probably would have seen a nice spike in the number of applications that were being sent to the more selective schools in honestly the pandemic year and the year after, kind of the year that test optional became much more popular. There was a flood of applications to the selective schools, and so there was that increase that happened, and then they're still at high levels, but the increase has kind of flattened off. So that's why you can see the growth in applications at the more selective schools is about 5%. It's still high, the number of applications relative to the pre-pandemic years, but I think we basically got this influx of students, and then that caliber of students is just now continuing to apply to the more selective schools. But where we really are seeing the growth of applications is at schools that have higher acceptance rates, at that 50% and higher. And this also goes along with seeing more applications at the public universities, which tend to accept, more students. So I think that this is good. I think hopefully also some students are seeing that they have to diversify where they should apply. They may be, still applying in the more selective category of colleges, but they have to include some lesser selective colleges in their college list. And so I think some of these numbers start to reflect that shift in where the applications are really going. Anything you want to add, Luann?
No, I think you covered it, Debbie.
Okay. Just so I see a few questions, and we're going to get to them about how to dig deeper for resources. So just hold on for a few minutes. Here is where we talked about the international applications. Again, after the pandemic year, which is, really that 21, 22, we saw an increase because the doors kind of opened again and international students came back. We're still continuing to see a growth in the international students. The kind of interesting little tidbit is the percentage of applications from China has decreased, but what has significantly increased is applications from India. And although we have the numbers here for Ghana and Nigeria, they have increased, but they started at such a small base that there's still not, a large number of students, but there's definitely much more of an influx of applications that are coming from India. And quite honestly, colleges like these applications because foreign and international students tend to be full price students. And so they do use these types of students and applications to balance their revenue. So here's some information about percent of schools that are test optional and the percent of students that are reporting scores. And I think there was a question earlier about, will students go back to require the test scores like the ACT, SATs? And we'll talk about that for a second. So as you can see, from 2019 to this year, obviously, again, this was a pandemic impact that schools went test optional and they basically never went back, except for some schools have gone back. And this year, there were even, almost every school is test optional. It's really probably easier to say who isn't test optional these days, which is like MIT, Purdue, is it Georgia Tech? It's all the Georgia schools, right? All the public Georgia schools.
Florida schools as well.
Florida, yep. And maybe Luann, can you talk a little bit about specific programs, though? A school might be test optional, but specific programs where you're seeing that scores are required.
Yeah, most of your nursing students, they will require a SAT or ACT. And I saw somebody ask about homeschool. Most of your homeschool students are going to be required to submit scores as well. So, there's, as Debbie was saying, test optional has been around, but it doesn't mean if it's test optional that they're not even going to consider the test scores. So you have to think about the major that your student is going into, especially say like engineering, computer science, nursing, a lot of the business majors as well. They're still, especially if you're looking for scholarships, merit scholarships. A lot of schools will have tiers. They want a specific GPA and a specific SAT or ACT score to get, a level of merit scholarship. So test optional does not mean that that everyone's application is treated the same. I guess there's all these different levels. And I'll use Alabama as an example. Yes, they are test optional and they have their tiered scholarships, but they also have a competitive scholarship for those that have chosen not to submit a score. They have to have a certain GPA to submit for the competitive scholarship, but it's very limited. It's not automatic like the rest. So if the cost of college is important to you, then I encourage you to still look at having your students look into doing test prep and trying to get the best scores that they can.
Our quick recommendation, quite honestly, is that your students should try and take a test. There's a difference between taking a test and having your test score and deciding to submit it. And, going back to this concept of having options, it is better to have the test score and then make your decision of whether or not you think it will strengthen your student's application to include it, but at least you have the option to make that decision. personally, this is my interpretation also of the number here, about 48%, that it has decreased. And again, I think it goes back to the influx of applications that we're seeing this year, and an increase in applications to maybe the public schools as well. So what this is saying to me is that there are more students that are applying and not submitting their scores. It doesn't mean that colleges are not looking at scores. So those are two separate concepts. And quite honestly, at a lot of the selective schools and, you know, the highly selective and the selective schools, they are, you know, they are test optional, and they like to be test optional because test optional increases their funnel. It increases the number of applications they're going to get. And then it gives them the option to decide whether or not they're going to be looking at test scores on a particular student and considering them. And we've heard from a lot of, you know, admissions offices that they, you know, depending on the high school that you might be coming from, the program that you're considering, they are still looking at test scores and considering them. They, again, the world of test optional has has made it more of an advantage for colleges because it has made it more opaque for us, for families and for people who help students. We don't really know what they're doing unless they tell us, but now they have more options of whether or not to consider test scores. And as a student, you have to decide whether or not your test score is going to strengthen your overall application. One last little hint or tip is that on the common data set, and I saw that somebody gave a little bit more instructions about how to find a school's common data set, is a field, and I don't know exactly which section it is, but I think it's in the section where they have all the data related to test scores, is a data that says whether a school, it says the number of students who enrolled. Of those students, how many had submitted their SAT or ACT? It's not a perfect indicator of how many students actually sent it in with their applications, but it's a pretty good indicator that if the school is placing an importance on using test scores to admit students. So I would try and find that piece of data if you're looking at a school's common data set. So somebody is asking, Luann, I don't know if you can answer this, about can you find acceptance rates for particular majors, instead of the overall school's acceptance rate?
I think Aaron answered that, that they have that information on College Confidential.
If the information is available, it's out there. And then if you drill down into some of the forums, they will talk about that. But they do have acceptance rates as a college as a whole, and then some schools will have it drilled down.
I see that somebody asked as far as should they submit their scores when they take the SAT, and you know, we found that yes, you can. I think you can choose like have four free submits if you decide at that time before you see the score that the College Board will submit those scores to the schools for free. But it's really not a great way of doing that. If your student is, especially if it's their first time that they're taking the tests, you know, you want to see those scores before you decide to submit them to the schools. And a lot of schools have started doing an SRAR, which means that you can self-report your scores. So it's trying to cut down on a lot of the costs for submitting scores. And then if your student gets accepted, then they would like to see the official score. And so that way, if your student is applying to, 16 or 20 schools, they don't have to spend so much sending your scores to all those different schools. You can wait. A few do still want the official score submitted with the application, but usually that's your more selective schools as well.
And somebody is asking if we can clarify, they're kind of questioning about the Georgia and Florida state schools. Are they no longer test optional? Quite honestly, Florida never went test optional. Even during the whole pandemic, they kind of stuck to requiring test scores. And Georgia went back and forth. These are the Georgia state schools. They had gone test optional, and you know, at the state level, they decided to go back. I think it was last year, and require the test scores again.
Yeah, Florida was because of their Florida Bright Futures. Depends on test scores for those scholarships.
And another, somebody's asking about, can you explain super score? How about Luann, if you can explain that, and then we'll keep moving.
Sure, and somebody would just very kindly explained, you know, in the chat for the person. Yep.
Okay, great. We will move on. So another trend that we're seeing, again, isn't necessarily new, but we're kind of like seeing an increase in it, is that schools that offer early decision are leaning into accepting a pretty large percentage of their class early decision. So remember, I explained earlier, if you apply early decision, you are basically, if your student is accepted, they are committing to saying, I'm going. So it's as if when they send in their application for early decision, they have to feel confident that if they are accepted, this is the school that they truly wanted to go to, because if they are accepted, they're committed to going. So we're seeing some schools that, you know, and I'm going to use the example of Tulane. You could see a few years ago, Tulane had early decision, and at that point, the number of students who they accepted early decision was only 28% of their final class who enrolled. Now it is up to 68%. So what that says, if your student is considering Tulane, quite honestly, is you have to apply early decision. I don't want to say have to, but it's strongly recommended to apply early decision, because your chances of getting in regular decision are significantly impacted, and will be significantly harder because there just are not as many spots that are going to be left in the regular decision round. And whether we like it or not, you know, this is one of the business aspects of colleges and college admissions. When they accept a larger percentage of their class early decision, what they're doing for themselves is they are ensuring their revenue, because again, if they accept that student is saying that they're coming. So for Tulane, if they accept 68% of their students early decision, they know by, you know, December 15th, when they send out those announcements, they've locked in 68% of their freshman revenue, because those students are now committed to come. So that's a good thing for the colleges. It's not so good for the student who may not have wanted to make that commitment early decision. And the second thing that early decision does for colleges is that, and somebody asked this question earlier about protecting their yield. This is a very strong factor in how they protect their yield. And what yield is a number that shows kind of the strength of a college's, you know, attractiveness, because it's the number of students who decide to enroll who have been accepted. So basically, it is showing when a college says, we want you, it's then the student decides, I'm going to come. It's that percentage that shows how strong the attractiveness is of the college. So a higher percentage for yield means that the majority of students who are accepted decide to come. And if you are playing the early decision game, you know, it's somewhat of a game, and you accept more of your students' early decision, again, you are improving your yield, because you know how many students are going to enroll, because you're accepting them, and you know immediately that they're going to enroll because they're coming early decision. Anything you want to add to that, Luann?
Well, I've seen a couple of questions in the chat. So there's so much misinformation about early decision. And somebody said, well, how can someone expect to get accepted if they don't even know how much it's going to cost? So if you are going into an early decision application, you really need to understand what the cost is going to be. Look at the common data set, or look at other types of resources that will show what it's been like in the past for a student with your GPA, SAT score, or such. But just know that because you apply early decision does not mean that your student will not get merit scholarships. It does not mean that the student will not get institutional aid if they qualify for it. You can do the net price calculators for the schools, but oftentimes they're a little bit out of date. So you need to do your due diligence to see, are we going to, whatever facts and figures come up, are we going to be able to afford this school? Now, if your net price calculator calculations or such come in so far off the charts that the school is not offering what you had expected, yes, you are not forced to pay that. You can decline that offer. But if they've come in with an offer that is within your affordability range, and you have told them, this is my number one school, at that point, you need to rescind your other applications. That you can't just sit there and wait for early action applications to come in. Oh my goodness, look, this one is offering me more merit than what the early decision offer. I'm going to go ahead and change my mind then. So there's some ethics there, but just because you apply early decision does not mean they're not going to give you merit scholarships or institutional aid. But you need to realize, is this school going to be affordable for you to make that decision? Early decision, they are going to fill more seats because, like what Debbie was saying, that benefits the college to know that you're ready to make that commitment. But if you're not that ready and you do want to see what other schools might offer, then just apply. Either if they, a lot of schools that do early decision, they don't offer early action. They'll just offer regular decision. Let your student apply regular decision and then have some other early action applications as well as rolling admission. Again, building up a more well-balanced list.
And somebody is asking if the numbers that we're showing include colleges that offer early decision 1 and early decision 2. And for those who aren't aware, some colleges have what we call a second round of early decision. Therefore, it's called early decision 2. Early decision 1 deadlines are usually somewhere between November 1st to December 1st. A bulk of decisions are usually around that November 1st deadline. And then early decision 2 can be anywhere from like December 15th to January 15th or even February 1st, something around that. So it's kind of like the second wave of early decision. It is for, I think the colleges look at it as a possibility for a student who might have applied early decision 1 and didn't get in and still wants to try for an early decision. And they might go to their, second choice. And so they'll apply early decision 2. It could be for a student who wanted to wait and either maybe improve their test score and they wanted to include it in a later application date, or they wanted to show better grades from a first semester transcript, and they decide to apply early decision 2. It's a little hard. Colleges don't break out, not all colleges, they don't break out the numbers of early decision 1 versus early decision 2, but my gut from seeing what's goes on, that tends to be a smaller application pool in early decision too, which, you know, may be advantageous, but it's hard to put actual statistics against that. So here's a slide with a little bit more specific, you know, numbers related to this year. You know, it's hard to see the exact numbers for each of these schools, but I'll point out a few. And I just wanted to point out, again, some of the trends which relate to everything that we've talked about. So Boston College, you know, Boston University, they had a 34% acceptance rate for early decision. Some of the Ivies, Brown had 14, Dartmouth had 17%, you know, Duke had 13. And so if you know anything about the numbers related to these more selective schools, you will see that the percentage of students as a percentage get in at a higher rate early decision as opposed to regular, and it's just a little bit of a numbers game. If a school, you know, even Brown, you know, or Dartmouth or Duke, they tend to still take about 40 to 50% of their class size in early decision. So if they have fewer students applying and they taking, you know, that 40 to 50% of the class early decision, then by default, the acceptance rate is going to be higher in early decision. So just again, this is not at all to pressure anybody to apply early decision because it is a big commitment, just trying to explain the numbers. And then when you tend to see overall application numbers, which for those types of schools might be in the 6 to 8% range, it's because it's now a blending of you know, of the admission number from regular decision with early decision. So whenever I see an overall admission rate, I really try and dig down to break out, well, what were the admission rate for just regular decision versus what was it for whether, you know, early decision, because you'll see, you know, a big difference in those numbers, which is important to know. And another thing, and we again kind of touched on it this whole time, you know, schools like Fairfield and Fordham, the reason why their admission numbers are dropping is because they're seeing huge volume increases in applications. It's just a matter of math. You know, even if they take the same number of students and they get this influx of applications coming in, the denominator has increased, the numerator has stayed the same, and therefore, you know, it looks like they're more selective. Technically, you could say they're selective, but they're probably picking the same type of student. They just had a wider number of applications to choose from. So, you know, that's a trend that's going on while you see this in the numbers. We already discussed yield protection. So when you see a number like 68%, that, and probably Fordham is doing a little bit of yield protection as well. When you see a school that takes such a high percentage of students early decision, and it's also a high percentage of their overall admissions or enrollment class, then you know that they are strategically doing this so that they can make sure that their yield looks good. And then we're seeing schools who you know, are selective as well. This is University of Southern California, who didn't have who didn't kind of play in the early admissions, you know, game, and they're recognizing as more schools are letting students apply early action, that they've got to be in there too, because they want to be a part of the decision set. So if they have students who they might have wanted to accept it, but those students applied early someplace else, they're kind of behind the 8 ball. So, you know, it's you know, a domino effect. One thing leads to the next as more students apply early action. And if a school hasn't been part of that early action, they're going to start to apply, they're going to start to offer early action, and kind of the wheel keeps moving, and then more students apply early action. So you can see how these trends start to build on each other. And then the fourth kind of piece that I didn't list here is sometimes you just see a school make an institutional priority change. What happened this year was related to Cornell. They put out an announcement after their early decision date that they were going to decrease the number of students that they accepted early decision. That was like an institutional priority. They decided that they wanted to have more spots available in their regular decision round. You know, that's the school's priority. I think that there was a lot of backlash because students should have known that before the deadline. So I think that there was a bad timing of communication on Cornell's part. I don't know if that was purposeful or not, but that's, you know, sometimes you'll see that action happening, which is going to affect some of the numbers here. Okay, so we are at the hour. Let's just sum up what, if you're a family with a junior, you know, what's the takeaway from all of this information that we've provided? As you can see, you know, barriers to apply, barriers to that you know used to make it a little bit more cumbersome to send out applications are vanishing. So more schools are going test optional. We're even seeing schools now that used to ask for essays no longer ask for essays because essays are a form of you know, a barrier to students applying. You know, Luann, you know, mentioned that the FAFSA now has, you know, allows you to have, you know, 20 schools to apply to. Some of these big state universities are becoming part of the Common App. And so all you need to do is now check another box so that you can send your Common App essay to, you know, another school. So, you know, it's easier and easier on some level to apply to schools. And that's why we're seeing more applications. And, you know, my guess is even if the number of students flatlined and stayed the same next year, you would still see an increase in applications because, you know, the more uncertainty that there is in the system, and I don't blame students, they feel like they have to apply to more places because they don't know what the outcome's going to be. And particularly, and if you know, read any of the comments either on College Confidential or in the Paying for College 101 group, you see that there are more surprises. There were more schools where students thought, well, I should definitely get in, like I'm kind of a safety for this, and they ended up not getting in. I saw that a lot. Actually, I saw that with the recent announcements of Rutgers. I saw that with JMU. I saw that with Purdue. These were probably, you know, students who thought, well, this is to some extent my, you know, target school, my safety school, and they ended up not getting in. I don't know how much you saw that, Luann.
Oh my gosh. You know, you have to just kind of step back and realize how many high schools, public high schools, not even the private schools, but public high schools in the United States. And so there's over 25,000. And so you've just got to look at, it's a numbers game. And now we can put 20 applications very easily on just one app. You know, you've got a lot more students that are applying to schools that they never would have applied to before, because they're thinking, well, geez, let me try. This year I was shocked at the supplemental essays and the lack of supplemental essays that I've never seen before. I had a group of students and I'm automatically assuming, okay, we're going to go to this school and you're going to have, 3 or 4 supplemental essays. Miss Luann, there aren't any. And it was just shocking. So there's a lot more applications, which means that there's going to be a lot more rejections. It's a numbers game. You cannot take this personal. It's a business transaction. Someone also asked, as far as where is there a big gap in the dates between early decision and early action? Some of them are, the same date. It's just what is going to work for that institution to try to build the class that they're looking for.
So I see somebody's asking, what is rolling and what is regular decision? And I apologize if we didn't make that more clear earlier on. So rolling admission is when a college usually, opens up their application and they are accepting students as soon as they are open, or their application, portal is open, and they tend to review the application as it comes comes in a timely fashion, and then they respond back to students, fairly quickly. There are they and they with the, what their decision is. I guess what I'm saying is they don't wait until all the applications are in. They look at the application as it is sent in, and that is good to know. And I think, as Luann actually recommended earlier, it's nice to have your student apply to a few schools that have a rolling decision, because you will know much faster about whether they've gotten in, and then to just know that there is at least one place that they have an acceptance as, it just makes them feel more secure for the rest of the process. And
Long drawn out process.
Yes, it's a long drawn out. So and rolling decisions at some schools can open up August 15th, September 1st. So as you can see, and see some of the questions, deadlines are really important to know. Deadlines on or opening dates of when a school is going to start to accept rolling applications, deadline of early decision, deadline of when a merit scholarship application is required, deadline for financial aid forms, because the deadline for financial aid forms that a college sets as their deadline is and can be very different from what the federal government's deadline is. I don't know, Erin, if you have anything to say about that.
Do your FAFSA.
Yes.
I think with the majority of the students and families that are on the call, juniors, whether you're a junior or seniors, you can fill out your FAFSA for next fall now. Juniors, you will be able to apply on October 1st. So I would strongly suggest completing the FAFSA, whether you think you're going to be eligible or not. As we kind of talked about a little bit with some of the merit scholarship opportunities, institutional funding for those private schools and some public, a lot of those are going to require the FAFSA on file in order for, part of the eligibility. So I strongly suggest completing the FAFSA. And it does help with some of those financial aid costs and making that decision on which college you want to attend.
So somebody's asking a very good question, very astute. They probably, are reading up on this and say, isn't there a big enrollment cliff approaching? And what they're talking about is there is just a demographic cliff of 18-year-olds. And I think it starts either next year or the year after. I think in 2025 or 2026, it's the graduating class of high school. If you go back, 18 years, the birth rate, dropped. And so there are going to be fewer 18-year-olds and therefore fewer students that are available to go to college. And how that will impact the system, I can make some suggestions. It may or may not impact, again, those selective colleges, kind of like those top tier colleges of, that have admission rates of 25% or lower, because it's just this, it's a brand name, it's a supply and demand game for those schools. They limit their capacity, and there's always going to be excess demand to want to go to those schools. So just because there's fewer students that graduate, there's still going to be high demand for those students. I do think you will see an impact from the demographic cliff on kind of those smaller schools, and or schools in that third tier of maybe acceptance rates now of 25% to 50%, because they're going to have to compete more for students, and that may be meaning that they'll offer more merit scholarships, more aid, but they're going to have to be careful that they balance how much they can offer versus how many students are going to come in, and whether or not they're going to have their what they call enough net revenue. I don't know, Luann and Erin, if you have anything more to add about the demographic cliff.
No, I think, you covered it great, Debbie. And it's still probably going to take a little while for it to kind of trickle down, because we are applying to so many different schools. But some of the smaller, less popular schools are going to struggle. And we've seen that. through COVID, and we're going to start seeing, more of that. So one of the other things that you need to be aware of is to check the financial foundation of the schools that your students are applying to, because you don't want to have them go halfway through a school and find out that they're going to be closing their doors.
Okay, so last piece of advice, again, for the families with high school students of class of 2025, what else should you be thinking about as you're going into this process? We talked a little bit about test scores or testing. There is a new digital SAT that's coming out in March. Supposedly, the colleges are going to be willing to super score the new digital SAT with older scores. But this is just so something else, some other decision that you're going to have to decide. Should my student take this new digital SAT, or should they prep for the ACT? Again, our recommendation is it's good to probably still take the test and then decide whether or not you're going to submit the test. But I've heard, and I'm not a test prep expert. We've had some test prep professionals talk about this in terms of whether or not your students should take the digital SAT, and I've heard a mixed bag. Some people think it's going to actually be a better test, but others people caution, whenever you're dealing with a new test, particularly with the College Board, you don't want to get involved because there might be too many glitches. So just another wrinkle in the process to consider. Will colleges change their early decision policies like Cornell did? I think you may see that, in the really selective schools. They have the privilege of making these decisions, and also the really selective schools have the financial cushion to make these decisions. So, they may decide, again, from some of the political pressures that have happened, with the Supreme Court decisions, that they might loosen, or they might kind of scale back. But I guess we'll have yet to see what happens there. And Erin, if you want to talk about the FAFSA changes, I mean, in terms of we're not going to go into detail about FAFSA changes because there's so much there, but the fact is that unfortunately, families may not get the same amount of aid under the new FAFSA. Certain groups of families may not get the same amount of aid under the new FAFSA calculations versus the old ones.
So yeah, that is the changes of the FAFSA, but you all are new to the FAFSA with being juniors and seniors, so it's not really new for you. It's just a different. If you've got older siblings or a parent who had completed the FAFSA and had historically what was called the expected family contribution, or the EFC, is now a student aid index. And it can be a negative number. So there's a lot of different things happening. That EFC was never a negative number. So moving forward, as you are completing your FAFSA information this year or next year, reach out to your schools. If you have questions, reach out. But that number that the FAFSA will spit out to you is not what you will owe. It is just a number that goes on a chart to tell the schools what financial aid that you are eligible for, whether that's your Pell Grant, your student loans, institutional aid, state aid, scholarships, work study, all of the above. It helps with the determination of all those eligibilities. The change that the federal government made to the methodology in the FAFSA is going to mostly affect our middle class dependent students. So that's where the change kind of comes into play. I would complete the FAFSA, and then if there has been some significant income changes or circumstances, reach out to your financial aid office.
And there is, and I don't know, I haven't kind of tested it enough myself. There is a new SAI estimator, right, that the government put out. I don't know, Erin, if you have any kind of opinions about how accurate it is. I mean,
To be honest, I mean, I worked in the financial aid office for so long. Even 5 years ago, last year when EFCs were how we calculated need-based aid, so like your scholarships and your Pell Grants and subsidized loans, the number that the students usually get initially may not actually be what their offer is going to be, just because it's an estimated number. They could be selected for verification, that sort of thing. So the estimators are nice to give you an idea, but it doesn't take into consideration any type of merit. It doesn't take into consideration any corrections or updates the school will have to make. So be careful. It's a good estimate, but it's not this is what it's going to be actual.
Okay. So any final comments, Luann, about like any tidbits of advice you want to give before we finish tonight?
Sure. So there was somebody has asked numerous times, Hannah, if a student applies early decision and gets rejected, will the school in their major, will the school give them early decision in a different major? And I've never seen it happen.
Right.
So if you're outright rejected early decision, that means you've just been rejected from the school. Now you can be deferred from early decision to early action and or to regular decision. So that means that now you're not tied to that financial commitment. So it just depends on how that gets offered to your student. Debbie, isn't it Monday that we've got the call
Yes.
for families that are divorced and separated?
Yes, we're doing 2 FAFSA sessions on Monday. We did a FAFSA session back in December. We got so many questions, understandably, from families that are divorced that we're doing a special FAFSA session just for families of divorce to talk about all of those circumstances that occur. That is at noontime this coming Monday. And if you guys are on our mailing list, you'll get an invitation to that. And then we're doing, it's called the FAFSA doubleheader on Monday because we're doing the noon session and then a session at night, and I think it's at 8 p.m. For just general FAFSA questions. So if there's, families here with high school seniors and you got questions and you've got run into glitches, which unfortunately too many people have, feel free to come and just ask your questions and we'll try and answer as many as you can. So thank you, Erin and Luann. Here, I'll just kind of jump quickly to just mention again, if this type of session was helpful to you, you should consider joining our premium program. We have these 2 times a month on different topics. We have office hours. It's all meant to educate you and then to answer your questions. Hopefully, if this was a session that you like, you'll consider joining the premium. If you're a family of the seniors, consider entering your information in Compare Offers and also sharing your information on College Confidential and looking at the College Confidential forums there to see how your student stacks up to what other information that students are sharing there as well. And I see, there's a lot of questions, quite honestly, about FAFSA, the Common App, essays. We start going over all that stuff, when it gets closer to those dates. But if you want, more specific information about, all of those parts of the process, it would be good to consider joining the premium session. Personally, if I'm a family with a high school senior, now is the time to understand what your budget is for college, understand what college costs are, start researching colleges in general about acceptance rates and what their costs are and what their different programs are. Start building a college list that you're going to use to visit colleges, and then start creating a college list that your student might want to apply to. That's what I would focus on. Leave the Common App a little bit for a few more months. Leave the essays for a few more months. Understand how the FAFSA works. Do your SAI estimator just to get a ballpark, and that would be a great start to your process. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Luann and Erin. And thanks for everyone who showed up. Hopefully this was worthwhile and gave you some information.
Alrighty,
Thank
good.
you. Good night.
Thanks. Bye-bye.